We understand now that like there could be something right there, but they're on a different frequency than us, and we are being fed information by the autonomic nerves. It is so fast that when you go to stand up, it contracts random arteries, like all these different arteries, and maintains the pressure, like changing our eyes when light comes in. If it's sitting right there, if it doesn't change at all, then we're just sitting there with a picture in our face, right? And then when it's moving, the only time we open up the picture is when we're looking at the same thing, and we have these two big nerves that go right through our eyes, right? We have what's called the optic blind spot. You can go on Google right now, check out the blind spot test. Test yourself and watch the whole world just go, like something just changes. Like this one little black mark just goes away. And then now when you connect that with the fact that we have a refresh rate, right? Like we have about 120 bits a second of conscious resolution. You test it yourself, like how much you can do in like one period of time. The fact that it takes you so much effort to memorize a phone number, 7 bits, yet we have all this visual information that doesn't make any sense. You take a simple picture, it's like a 3 megabyte picture, and yet you're looking at it and you've got 120 bits a second. That would take you forever to see. This is why like so many situations you're like watching like, oh man, that's like, I forgot that's the first time I've heard that, or I just got that. That's like so much. This is why we can't remember simple things, like what we had for lunch like, you know, a week ago or whatever, because we're compression. We're literally running on 120 bits a second. We have the blind spot for a reason. The blind spot is because we're looking at that, and what we're doing is we're updating the frequency. It literally says it updates based on lux. So all the color that we're representing, all the frequencies, we compress that into this. And because we're running on a frequency, anytime something, like, you understand, like if you're on a wave, like the fact that you're on a wave, like allows for all of this stuff to happen. It's like crazy. Medical science is like testing it, and they're just like, I don't know what's going on here. Doesn't make any sense to me. And I'm like, dude, it makes perfect sense. There's equations, laws of physics, all sorts of stuff. Like voltage law, showing that you can't just send a signal straight through and then go, oh, I'm gonna go that way, or oh, I'm gonna go to your limb. But then we've got this thing called the pseudo-unipolar neuron. It's a bipolar direction. It basically allows for your autonomic nervous system, your spine, which controls your heart and all the veins, to just listen in on whatever you're thinking. And so it makes sense that when you stand up, it maintains your blood pressure, because there's always a thought that precedes an action. So when you just stand up, you're like, oh, that's pretty cool. Is that fast? It's like you thought stand up and then you hit a button. This is why we have this thing called the motor and the sensory homunculi. Doctors are just looking in your brain like, oh, look at this representation of the input and the output. That's a cool little doll. It's like, dude, you don't have a computer inside a computer. That's a simulation, man. And it makes sense when you run at 120 bits a second. We're a microcontroller like that right there. We're taking in, we're saving data. And because we're like, well, we got more data than we had earlier, we have what's called time. And because you can look back on time, a read function, you're like, look at how much time. And because like, if the reason why you don't have the ability to update anything, like even your sexual preferences, controlled by the autonomic. If you're a man, one end makes it get hard, the other one actually makes you ejaculate. All in your spine. And it's reading your thoughts with a probe. You know how many times someone has like been told by a doctor like, hey man, you'll never walk again. And they're just like, I don't believe that. And then all of a sudden they're walking. There are so many things, like the fact that we age is because we have saved the data. We are saving data because there's the only thing to age. Think about what like velocity means. Like when the fact of the matter is that like the faster you go, the slower you go in age. So what does that actually mean? They're like, oh, well, the twin thing, the twin principle, they never give you a perspective on that. So here's what it is. Like imagine the speed of light was 60 miles an hour. That means if you're aging at one rate and you get it to 80 miles an hour, in the car you're aging at half the time. You would never get to the location. That's what that means. It literally means the faster you are going, whoa, just driving around, the faster you're going, the slower time goes for you. You understand? Like, if the speed of light is 80 miles an hour and you go 40, for you, you never get there because it's how much distance you go with respect to time. But your time, and we know this is true because we have satellites that we have to update. We have to update these satellites or the time won't work. So it's not just like we've got these crazy equations from some crazy guy. We've got equipment we're like using right now. There is microwaves coming through the wall into my phone. You know what microwaves are? Microwaves are the light that's coming through this window, except they are going through the wall. And whatever reason that these microwaves go through that wall, they turn into a YouTube video or a text. People don't understand how insane that is. We're supposed to use both lobes of our brain. You're never ever supposed to try and debate with one or the other, because one handles rational thoughts, calculations, things like that. The other one handles emotions. So we have one that can detect and understand things that are logical, that don't affect us, and then the other one has like stuff that we affects us, but we can't explain it yet. This is how we can communicate and like we are supposed to compress information. We are data compression, and the only way that works is if you use both lobes. This is why like Jimi Hendrix or someone will just like shred on the guitar. It doesn't make any damn sense. Or like why Elon would do something crazy, like because you're supposed to use both lobes. There's one that's going to give you an emotional sensation, stuff you see, but it doesn't really, you can't explain it logically because you don't understand it yet. And then there's a part where you've got it compressed where it's actual information. This is the most insane thing ever. But all of it, I can like prove it on paper with pencil. You can take pictures. You can think about what dreaming is. Why do babies sleep so frequently and so like weird when they're born? Because they're literally building their mental model.